Hi friends, I hope that you are doing wonderful today. I'm so excited to see you. While I originally planned to do a choose your own adventure exploration video today, I do not have the time needed to go ahead and do that, so I've decided to do something that should theoretically be simpler, a jump doc read through. Today we are reading through the generic spy thriller, which is about novels, not about movies, Jump doc, which is by Black Shadow 111. Black Shadow is a well-known jump maker, and if you have been around and if you like various different generic jumps, you will probably have seen something by them sooner or later. We are going to go ahead and dive right on in. It is worth noting the default time and place for this particular jump doc are Cold War era Earth, but there isn't really any serious restrictions in place here. If you think you could have a good time doing a spy novel in Coruscant or in ancient Egypt, you can do that. All of that is ultra legal, so ultra legal that in this jump it is endorsed by the jump maker, so long as that is your intention and you think you could have fun. And also, it's worth noting that I think that someone could have a lot of fun doing a spy thriller novel jump set in Star Wars. I think that could be extremely rad. I would absolutely be thrilled to hear about how someone does that and about the ways that someone reflavors some of the perks and some of the items here. This is a fairly standard jump as far as origins and choice points go. You get 1,000 choice points. There are 4 origins. There is a drop-in origin, which obviously you don't get any new memories. You just get plopped down into wherever it is that you are effectively spawning in. There are perks and items that will help with this and are also really solid for drop-ins and for people who prefer drop-in origins in future settings, so that's definitely worth keeping in mind. We'll talk about those when we get there. There is the Agent, which is the generic protagonist of these sorts of novels. There is the Enemy, which is one type of enemy. Typically, these are the more direct antagonists that people will tend to remember. These are terrorists and potentially cult leaders, criminal overlords, that kind of thing. And then there's the Puppet Master, which are the real enemies. These are business moguls, politicians, potentially religious figures. There are spy thriller novels that have all sorts of antagonists in this sort of overarching role, but these are the actual super baddies, and the enemy will tend to be the more direct, you can shoot them and deal with them that way kind of enemy. And both of them are really cool and really interesting roles. We will be talking about all of their perks and items. This jump begins with a generic perk section, as in these are undiscounted perks, so keep that in mind. Fourth Wall Climber is one of the really good perks for if you are someone who prefers to do drop-ins, or if you're someone like me where you don't really like meta knowledge all that much and you prefer for your jumpers to not have at the very least the firmest memories of the settings that they go to, so you do things to make it so that they're not able to remember every single lore secret in a setting that they go to, but you still want them to be able to piece together the plot. This makes it so that you can see things like the tropes in play, the various roles and designations characters around you have, and you are also able to step into it to shape it here and there. It's not a magical ability, but it is a narrative ability, and as anyone with sufficiently experienced jumpers will tell you, narrative abilities can be absolute game changers in the right hands, so that's definitely worth keeping in mind. A crucial talent makes it so that you are really, really, really good at the outward facing things of like business and politics. This is a superb perk. I definitely think that there's a reason it costs this much, both in a spy setting and in anything from a post-apocalyptic survival setting to a survival horror setting to just anything where you want to gain public power. A crucial talent is a fantastic perk to purchase. That said, it is a considerable investment at 400 choice points, so keep that in mind. Drop-ins begin with their free perk, which is just a job. This makes it so that you have an entirely innocent civilian job that will pay well. It could be anything from a lawyer to a stockbroker to a specialist surgeon. It will keep you comfortably, and for some reason the major things will tend to skip over you. This perk will also serve as a sort of anti-butterfly effect perk to some extent. It is not directly intended to prevent intervention from you, but it makes it so that your actions that might have indirect effects will have noticeably less impact on the overarching story. So if you want to experience the story from inside of the story but without directly intervening, this is a good perk for you to have. Analysis Ace makes it so that you got a really good brain in between your ears, and it makes it so that you are able to take little bits and pieces of data and piece them together very effectively, which is something that intelligence analysts are tasked with doing. And intelligence analysts, for those of you who are unfamiliar with that term, are part of a support crew in an intelligence agency. They do a lot of the surprisingly important work behind the scenes that comes from spycraft. They will take all of the intelligence they gather and they will make hypotheses based off of it. They will assess it and analyze it and try to make it into something actionable for people in the field, as well as to send to their higher ups throughout the agency, so that way people can stay informed as to developing situations all over the world. They are behind the scenes people, so they are not going to be directly in the field for the most part, but this makes it so that you are able to do that, which means that if you wanted to work for something like the FBI, the CIA, or the NSA, you would be able to do that much more effectively and much more safely, because you would be one of the people behind the desk rather than one of the people in the field. Quick Study makes it, Quick Study is a little bit deceptively named because it is a lot more than something that makes it so that you develop your skills really fast. This is an overall enhancer, and it's worth noting that this is the capstone perk for this particular origin. Normally capstone perks cost 600 choice points. This time, every single perk tree only has 3 perks and only has 3 items. So this is going to cost you 200 choice points, assuming that you took the drop-in as your origin. And this makes it so that you are just an overall, you inch a lot closer to peak human status in every conceivable way. And obviously there are things like the Essential Body Modification Supplement that do that a lot more effectively, but this is something that is not fiat backed to your body mod. It is only fiat backed to the extent that you have either perks from this jump or outside context perks and other jumps available to you. Still, this is something that is remarkable, and this is something that could potentially be life-saving for little baby jumpers. If a baby jumper decided to come over here and didn't have that many things that made them peak human, this is something that would make them peak human in every respect. And that is definitely something that is worth keeping in mind. Just a very fun thing for you to have. We are now going to go over to the agents. The very first perk of the agents, which is free for anyone who takes this origin, is going to be a perk that makes it so that you are able to be a top level supremely capable spy in this world. It is worth noting that this is a world that, at least in this respect, is closer to realism than Hollywood spy movies are. So you are not going to have everything to be an extremely proficient sniper, although this will boost your skills in that respect as well. But this is something that is going to make you very good at the actual day-to-day work of spycraft. So that's something that could be really fun. This also makes it so that you are a great handler on the field. As you can tell by reading the second paragraph, there is a lot of different sections here. How to set up and service dead drops, which is where spies can go and transfer information. How to craft and live legends, which I believe is the term for someone's like sort of persona on the field, their sort of civilian identity that they maintain in front of people who do not know about their true identities. How to convince others to sell secrets to you and how to keep things secrets. This is just a perk that makes it so that if you want to be a spy, you are able to do the important stuff of spy work. The professional's professional makes it so that you are able to execute a plan perfectly. This is very important because, and this perks description talks about the difference between brilliant, flawless plans that never materialize in the real world and plans that are as perfect as they can be realistically. This makes it so that you are able to use those second kinds of plans, and is also just something that makes it so that you are better at executing a plan as it's supposed to be executed. Just a very handy perk. The final perk here is unconventional growth, and this is a perk that makes you immune to office politics. It does more than that, but it makes it so that as long as you are effective at what you do and as long as you get results, there is a certain level of chaoticness that your colleagues are willing to put up with, a certain level of off the booksness, so long as you are actually putting in the work and getting the important stuff done, which obviously isn't always going to be easy. But if you needed to, for example, use a terrorist as a font of information to capture other terrorists, even if normally the agency that you worked for wouldn't be super thrilled about that, if you did it and you were able to stop a bigger terrorist plan as a result of it, they would probably be willing to let that go. They would probably be willing to give you the leeway there. This also makes it so that you are uncapped. Uncapping perks are very important because obviously normally there is a certain maximum limit to how much someone could do in a certain area. Normally someone's level of physical growth would experience some sort of cap. Even if someone had eternity to keep working, going past that cap biologically would probably not be possible, but this perk allows you to supersede that. I personally think that the more important stuff for a lot of jumpers is going to be the social effects, but uncapping perks are remarkable and incredibly handy, so it's definitely worth keeping that in mind if you decide to take this origin, especially if you don't have an uncapper. All right, we are on the enemy. The enemy is the more direct kind of antagonist, as I previously mentioned. They are the enemy spies and the henchmen in these sorts of novels that are physically present, that can more often than not just be shot to be dealt with, as opposed to having to deal with the ramifications of trying to off a puppet master. The first perk, which is going to be free, is Agent Provocateur. It's going to be free if you took this as your origin, is Agent Provocateur. Agent Provocateur makes it so that you are incredibly adept at being just an incredible nuisance. It makes it so that you are capable of dealing with people in a wide range of different ways, but that's only the simplest aspect of it. The truest power here makes it so that you know how to set up criminal organizations, including sleeper cells for terrorists. You know how to inspire cult-like loyalty even among criminals and other ne'er-do-wells, and you also know how to blackmail or compromise people into giving you the money that you want and that you need in order to be able to do your operations. This is a very handy evil perk, but it's also worth noting that a hero jumper could use this and then use this information to figure out how to corrupt and co-opt enemy organizations. In almost every case, the power of a perk is not going to depend on your moral alignments. There are exceptions to this, especially in settings where you first get the perks, because there are certain powers that connect you to things and that will make it so that you are more or less susceptible to other things. Not every perk is going to be a universal positive. So it is definitely worth keeping that in mind, but especially in mundane settings, if you want to be a hero jumper, you can take the evil origins and you can use the things that you get against other people who are or would be considered of the same origin as you. So just keep that in mind if you want to be a sort of darker anti-hero jumper. Reality Ensues is an anti-plot armor / narrative nonsense perk. It makes it so that normally in a situation where an enemy would have some sort of last minute advantage or would succeed through some sort of bullshit, they will not. The only way for an enemy to beat you is for them to be better than you are at something. This does not give your plans any level of protection. It just makes it so that the sort of authoritarian nonsense that some protagonists are armored with through the fact that good guys often win and other sorts of tropes like that don't work on you. Greatness and Infamy is a very curious perk. This is a reputational perk, and reputational perks, which are not really things that we have seen super often yet in the sort of jump doc read through series that we are doing right now. are perks that allow you to gain benefits from your reputations. There are various perks and all sorts of jumps that allow you to do this, but in this particular one, this makes it so that the more information leaks about you, and especially the more rumors spread and the more people start to fear you and to develop thoughts about you based off of what they've heard about you, the stronger you become. If there is a legend that you defeated 50 people by yourself, you may not be able to actually match that, but you would gain the skills needed to be able to take on a dozen, which is definitely not nothing and is a number that is very impressive. That can also be quite terrifying in the right hands. So this is definitely a perk worth keeping in hand if your jumper is someone who spreads legends about themselves. Curiously enough, there is a perk that is almost the pure opposite of that in the Puppet Master. The very first origin over here, the very first perk for the Puppet Master, which is the final origin, is called the Orchestrator. The Orchestrator is a fun perk that makes it so that you are able to figure out how people work and you are able to plan more effectively. This makes it so that you can become a scheming, plotting mastermind a lot more effectively than you would be able to otherwise. OPSEC is the perk that I mentioned earlier, the one that is the opposite of greatness and infamy, and this particular perk makes it so that information leaking about you and about your plans is effectively up to you. If you want it to happen, it can still happen, but if you want to keep it a secret, it is far harder for it to leak. Obviously, there can be incredible exceptions made here and there, but for the most part, if you want your wheelings and dealings to stay secret, they definitely can. This sort of perk could be incredible in the right settings, especially for people who are either dark heroes or villains. If you go to a perk like this, if you take a perk like this and you go to a setting like The Boys, for example, that would be incredible for helping you deal with and secretly manipulate VOTs and then other politicians who are influenced by supers, that kind of thing. The final perk, the capstone for this origin, is Virtuous Cycle. Virtuous Cycle is a very fun perk. This makes it so that your successes build on themselves, and this allows you to subtly manipulate things so that even minor successes can become the linchpin to future successes. These sorts of perks are incredibly handy, and it's easy to underestimate how powerful they can become, especially with something like a luck booster, for example. But effectively, what this is if you start winning fights, it becomes harder and harder to beat you in fights, and it becomes easier and easier for you to win. This sort of perk can be incredible for a jumper once they have sufficient resources, or once they have enough personal power that they can afford to take on dangerous enemies, or even jumpers who know that they're going to need to face dangerous enemies, but they're just like, with a perk like this, you can take on smaller enemies, you can win and have those successes build on each other in ways both subtle and not subtle. We are going to go ahead and take a look at the items. As I mentioned before, this is not a very long jump. We are already over on page 8 out of 13. It is worth noting that there is one general item, and it's free. This is a book series written in the style of your favorite author, detailing your adventures and exploits. You can choose which ones to document, and you can even give out free subscriptions to anyone that you feel like. This is handy. It's worth noting that that final bit is not usually how these kinds of items go. There are plenty of examples of items that will give you movies or manga or Western comics about your adventures, but you don't often get to see. You can choose which ones to document, and you can give out free subscriptions to anyone you feel like. Those sections are a bit more interesting. I've only seen a handful of cases where there is like an option to limit and to stop things from being shown if you wouldn't want them to be, and you have the ability to give them out for free to anyone that you like. Very neat. We are going to go ahead and take a look at the free item for the drop-in now. The free item is just a home. It's a luxurious home located somewhere out of the way. You can rely on it to keep your troubles away. It is worth noting that if you start using this as a base, some of the Protections here will drop. So if you want a base, there is a base item located in one of the other origins, so that is definitely worth keeping in mind. But this is, if your jumper is normally homeless at the start of adventures, or if this is like your first jump and you do not have a fiat-backed home, this will give you a fiat-backed home, which could be incredibly handy. The next item is the ratty old laptop. This would cost 100 choice points if your jumper took the drop-in origin. And this is an item that seems to look like an old, outdated laptop that may stop working any day now, but it's actually not. This computer has unlimited battery power and memory, and a data connection that cannot be disrupted by anything. Those are very powerful properties, although those are also fairly common properties for fiat-backed computers. However, it's also worth noting that this computer is also linked to just about every database on the planet, and it cannot be compromised from the other side, and it can never be tracked. This is just a really nifty quality of life item for jumpers in modern settings and for jumpers in slightly postmodern settings. So if you go to like a cyberpunk setting or something like that, you could purchase this a second time, which obviously for jumpers who have the drop-in origin would make it cost 200 choice points in total to get a smartphone, which would look old and ratty but would actually not be. It would be just as effective. Although it is curious to note that the default setting for this particular jump is Cold War era Earth. I was born and I was raised shortly after the Cold War. I don't know what a laptop from the Cold War era would look like. I don't know if there were even any regular laptops that were just available for sale in the like 1980s. Although I do know that personal computers and home computers definitely existed, and one of my first computers was one of the old computers from the 80s. The final item, the capstone item, is the transition protection item. This is not so much a physical object as it is a sort of status symbol that would allow you to preserve and protect your status across different settings. This is remarkable if you make it to be like the top of an organization and you want that to follow you into future settings. The organization would not necessarily follow you, but your status would, and once you enter into new organizations that are similar to the one that you were just in, you will quickly rise to occupy the same status. This could be very fun if you take this and then you go to something like, say, Skyrim, and you become the head of the Fighters Guild, the Companions, that was what it was called, and then you go to Oblivion after that, because theoretically you could use this item to very quickly go from an initiate in the Fighters Guild to the head of the Fighters Guild over in Cyrodiil. That is theoretically how this works. This is This is just a fun quality of life item if you've decided that you don't love the idea of starting over completely in a new world. Just something to keep in mind. We are now going to go ahead and go over to the agents items. The free item is the badge and a gun. This is another not quite physical item. It's more of a position that you can claim. In this case, you would be a member of an elite team of spies. It also carries all the rights and privileges of such a position, and it doesn't have any of the responsibilities. So effectively, this allows you to start off your adventures in this jump not quite in the position you probably would at the start of the first novel in your series, but the sort of position that you would get maybe even after the second or third book in the series that you are in, where you are a well-trusted, well-vetted, well-respected government official in your own right, even if you do not occupy a sort of position where like every sheriff and every cop in every small town would recognize you, you would still be able to use that sort of privilege and power, and you would be able to do it without having any super specific responsibilities. That is very fun if you enjoy having government backing and stuff, and also if you like the idea of being a gung-ho government official who does important and sometimes dark work to help keep your country safe. Red October is One of my favorite items in this setting, because it's just so ridiculous. This is a nuclear submarine item, and it comes with all of the things that you would think that a nuclear submarine would come with. And it also comes with something that you probably wouldn't think a nuclear submarine would have in the real world. It has the ability to be as undetectable as you want it to be, which I think is a very neat ability. If you want to have this and you are in a setting like Prototype, where a nuclear weapon is one of the ultimate things that humans have, it is very nice that you now have nuclear weapons of your own that answer only to you. Especially because obviously you don't have to be an agent, you don't have to be like an actual member of the intelligence community to be able to use this item if you wouldn't want to. You could still just purchase this and pay the undiscounted price as one of the enemy, or a drop-in, and I think have a drop-in having this would be very funny. That is obviously terrifying, because this is a nuclear submarine that has nuclear weapons and is nuclear powered, so it could stay, especially this Fiat backed version of it, could stay underwater and could stay hidden for as long as you wanted it to. You could have it and not ever use it in a setting, or you could have it and you could use it like every week if you really wanted to. The final item is called the Odessa file, and it's I believe that this is a reference to either a real thing or an apocryphal thing, that is a sort of dossier on a list of Nazis that fled Nazi Germany, and were able to successfully escape and were able to live elsewhere. But this isn't actually that Odessa file, that's just the name that was chosen for it. What this is it's a dossier of important crimes that were committed by influential people all over the world. And this is an incredible item because if you are a true good hero, you could use this to right a lot of different wrongs in every setting that you go to almost immediately. But if you are a less good hero and you just want to blackmail people, you could do that because the information in the files is true. That is one of the important things here. This does document real crimes, and the actual people who committed them are terrified of the information coming out, which gives you a lot of potential power. So there's a wide range of things you could do with. I personally think that someone like Luciano the Jumper would use this initially to blackmail some people, figure out who committed the most and the worst crimes, go after them, and then gradually go down the list until everyone has been drained of resources and then sent to prison. So that way Luciano can co-opt the things that they have and can use them for good, because Luciano is gradually becoming more of a justice and goodness type jumper. But I do feel like just using this to immediately go after all the people, while I do feel like that's the true good thing to do, also wastes a lot of potential even if you are interested in goodness. And of course, if you're not interested in goodness, then you have a lot of power in your hands. All right, so the free item for the enemy is called Rainy Day Stock. Rainy Day Stock is a shipment of weapons of a wide range of sorts that replenishes every week. This is a lot of power. If you want to, you could use this just to be an arms dealer, because there's actually nothing that says that these things wouldn't replenish if you sell them, as is often the case with these types of items. These types of items are usually meant to be like personal weapons or the weapons of your forces, but I do strongly appreciate that in this particular setting, you actually don't need that. If you really wanted to, you could absolutely sell these and you would still get a new shipment next week. So there's also a lot of stuff you could do with this. This is potentially an item that could be used to achieve a lot of different good ends if you are arming the right people. But obviously the implication if you are part of the enemy origin is probably not that you're going to be doing that, so that's fair. The next item is called the base, and the base is a secret base of your own. I mentioned earlier that the home item for the drop-ins could not be used as a base. This is a base that can be used as a base. It's secret. It has enough space to house a few hundred soldiers. It has global communications facilities, multiple ways in and out, and a lot of other security and quality of life features. It's also worth noting that this could allow you to do everything from coordinate a global drug cartel to coordinate revolutionary army activities all over the planet. There's a wide range of things you could do with this. One of the coolest aspects of this is that this scales up to you both here and in the future. This makes it so that if you went to other jumps where you became a sort of super tech high genius character who could invent all sorts of stuff, that will already be in this particular item. But as you go to future settings and as you gain more enhanced abilities, everything else will continue to scale up with you. So if you like the idea of being a revolutionary or a terrorist or a drug cartel person, this is a very handy thing for you to keep in mind. And the final item for this particular origin is probably my favorite item in this whole jump. It is an army item. It's called Boots on the Ground, and it makes it so that you have an army at your beck and call that is absolutely outfitted with the best possible equipment and the best possible training for any modern army, or at the very least any modern to the setting that you're in, provided that is not beyond modern in the real world. So if you go to ancient Egypt, I'm assuming that this probably would not give you items. I'm assuming this probably wouldn't give you fully armed modern soldiers. Although if you really wanted it to, I don't know of anything to suggest that it wouldn't. Especially because this does scale upwards. So if you go from here to like Warhammer or to Star Wars, this item would be improved. And they will also keep the stuff that they had from this setting. So that is potentially a lot of fun. It's also worth noting that this is an item that could completely transform other settings. If you have an army this size and you go to something like Elder Scrolls, or you go to like the Mushroom Kingdom after this, there is so much you could do with an item like this if you really decided that you did not want to play the game that Nintendo or Bethesda wanted you to play, and you just wanted to do something radically different. You would have the ability to do that. Very cool. The final origin is the Puppet Master, and there are obviously 3 items here. The first item is free if you took the Puppet Master as your origin. This is a very strong level of influence and power. Obviously, this is not a material item in the same sense as some of the other items have not been material items. This is a position thing. It makes it so that you will start off with some remarkable level of power. I personally would suggest not doing this in a governmental way. I personally think that it would probably be smarter in the modern world to do this in a megacorp. So you use this item and then you decide that instead of wanting to be a member of the cabinet of the United States, you decide that you want to be the head of an organization like Amazon, or you want to be like near the head of an organization like Amazon. Boom, you got it. I think that that's probably the better way to use this item, at least like in 2023. Although obviously if you are in the 1980s or something, you might have a different opinion. But yeah, the next item is the organization item. This makes it so that you are the head of a secret organization that is going to be pursuing goals that are more or less in line with yours. You are going to have the reach of an organization like the FBI, or proportionally many more institutions in a much more amorphous matter, if you decide to not have the direct level of influence over other organizations that this could otherwise grant. And of course, this item can grow bigger if you are an effective leader and you are someone who is able to get your fingers and even more pies, so to speak. So, and that those improvements and enhancements to its initial reputation will carry over in future jumps. So this is an incredibly potent thing for you to wield. The final item in this particular origin is a nation item. You are going to be the head of a nation, and it's not going to be a huge nation. It's not going to be something the size of America or China. It's going to be a small nation that is rich in natural resources, especially oil. So if you are not careful, if you're not careful and you're running a realistic adventure, you could theoretically get freedomed. So keep that in mind. But that said, if this is a nation that you are a skillful leader of, you are going to have a truly tremendous amount of influence at your disposal. It is also worth noting that with the right number of drawbacks, particularly from the Universal Drawback Supplement or something like the Banking Supplement, you can get a lot of stuff from a lot of different origins rather than just focusing on any singular tree, just because of the fact that at most everything over here, you could theoretically buy almost everything an origin has to offer without taking a single drawback, as long as you don't do undiscounted things and as long as you don't mix and match, even without drawbacks. But there are a few drawbacks here. That said, there's not a huge number of them, which is kind of disappointing. I obviously skipped over the companion section because the companion section didn't offer anything unique. Although if you know what the companion section offers in most jumps, you know what it offers here. So the first drawback is the bad case of nerves. This makes it so that you are not someone who is good at violence. Your body reacts badly to violence. Prima donna makes it so that you will behave like the worst kind of spy from the worst kind of stereotypes of action spy movies. Hunted makes it so that some sort of paramilitary organization is coming after you, unless you want it to not be a paramilitary organization, in which case you can get some additional points. But normally communists, Nazis, or terrorists are after you, and they really want you to die. And if this is one of your first jumps, that could actually be really bad, even if you have multiple different perks from multiple different origins. If you are a regular person other than the perks you have here, this could be a tough drawback to have to deal with. Published makes it so that there is someone who knew about you and published a series of novels that documented your adventures, and unlike the other ones, these adventures did not redact anything, and they also detailed your personality and your abilities. This means that a lot of people will know a lot of stuff about you. It is not super clear as to how much of your identity is revealed about this, but obviously, especially people who are in the know, people at the tops of intelligence agencies and things will know you, and they will want to use your powers if you have any sort of worthwhile abilities. And also, so will the heads of religious organizations and other influential non-governmental groups. So definitely keep that in mind. First day is a traditional lockout drawback. This makes it so that your powers, warehouse, and all of the other stuff that you don't have here and that you didn't get from here and that you didn't get from your body mod are locked away from you. So definitely keep that in mind. Bad Hollywood movies makes it, this is not something that is super affecting you. This affects the entire world. So this makes it so that the entire world runs on the logic of bad Hollywood spy movies, and that affects everyone's decision making. It affects the physics. It is potentially a pretty strict drawback if you're not careful, but at the same time, if you are a drop-in, or if you are someone who is otherwise able to disconnect yourself from the main sequence of events, you are going to be able to just sort of chill and watch the world run on this logic for 10 years, which obviously it's going to be a little bit trickier to get by for those 10 years, but it's not going to be that much trickier. That said, there are going to be some other things. There is a note section here. Black Shadow is a Space Battles jump maker. If you are curious about that, Space Battles has its own jump community. There are some notes here. There are theoretically companions are upcoming, but I've never actually seen any companions. I've never seen an updated version of this. I wouldn't be surprised if it exists, but this is definitely the most recent version that I have seen. So just keep that in mind. I am now going to go ahead and let you go. I hope that you all are having a wonderful day. I have strongly enjoyed this particular jump. It is something that a lot of my jumpers think about going to, and I'm sure if I ever did the simplest form of a chain where I just wrote out basic details about a character and listed the jumps that they went to, I would probably send them here pretty early. I might wait until after they've gone to a setting where they get superpowers and then allow them to face some of the goofier drawbacks here, like the bad Hollywood movie and the hunted drawback. Because with superpowers like telekinesis or teleportation or telepathy, it would be incredibly difficult for a character from a mundane setting, even a slightly amped up mundane setting like this one, to actually get the meaningful surprise on a jumper and actually axe them. These jumps are not super dangerous if you have gone to jumps that have given you any sort of superpower, and the perks that you get here are perks that lend themselves well to using different superpowers in a wide range of ways. For example, telepathy mixed with the operative perk is an incredible combination. If you have something like the loyalty or betrayal sense or the danger sense from generic Totally Not Mind Control, you would be golden in this jump. If you have telekinesis, it is effectively impossible for an enemy to trick you in a way that does a meaningful blow to you if you have any level of skill with the telekinesis. Obviously, there's just a lot of stuff that you could get here that would be a lot of fun, but I'm going to go ahead and let you all go. I hope that you have a wonderful day.